On October 12, 1956, I established communication with them. I will curse the moment to my dying breath. I hooked the input of the typewriter to the main vacuum tube of the ENIAC. Then I turned on the current that sent 1,000,000 volts of pulsing energy into the electronic nerves of the machine. I am certain that if anybody were watching me in the next moment, he would have thought me a raving maniac. I still wonder if perhaps it is not all a nightmare. Now, you, if what I have guessed at is true, if there is life and intelligence in this room, make a sign. There was nothing. Nothing but the hum of the machine and the dull glowing of the tubes. I tried once more. If you can hear me, if there is any way in which you can understand what I say, give me a signal. There was silence again. I felt that I had failed. When suddenly, without provocation or explanation, it happened. The electric typewriter began to respond to the impulses from the machine. The letters were Y-E-S. Yes, it had happened. I, Samson Gurney, had communicated with a machine.
In the future, we will be upgrading our bodies and our minds much the way we do machines. And I know this sounds like science fiction, but what's coming next will literally blow your mind. There are new technologies, and a lot of them are being developed by startups and the military that are going to allow us to much more accurately measure and actually communicate with your brain. Now, the nice thing about this early technology is it's non-invasive, meaning they don't have to crack open your skull and put a chip inside. And as I said, the current hardware is still pretty primitive, but the hardware that's coming out right now, literally as we speak, is going to blow open the doors for this. We're going to get to a whole new level. But I will tell you, the military, they pioneered the internet, DARPA, and now they are pioneering our interface to our brain. And if you think the internet is big, if you think blockchain is big, this is going to blow it all away. Because there's nothing bigger than connecting our minds to the internet. So connecting our brains to the internet is going to radically change how we live. And not just how we live, but how we view ourselves as human beings. But if you're looking at connecting our brains to the internet, one of the things we'll be able to do is we'll be able to outsource functions of our brain. So we'll be able to outsource, we'll be able to upload our memories to the cloud. If you've taken any drugs like LSD, suddenly it becomes real, right? Our minds are actually doing AR or VR, right? Putting dragons in the room and creating like all this stuff. We're able to, the point is, we are able to do that with our brains as they exist right now. So there's no need for external hardware. Once we tap into the brain, there is the potential that our minds itself can actually create overlays of AR and VR. If we have algorithms that stimulate the right things and give it the right data, we could literally see a screen pop up, and we call it hallucinating, right? But these would be controlled hallucinations run by algorithms that would give us everything AR would without any glasses, without any contact lenses. That is an idea I thought would be very interesting to explore, because our brains are now capable of doing it. How do we get them to do it? How do we control it? That is the question.
Controlled hallucinations powered by algorithms. That was just one of numerous standout quotes from a talk by this guy named Steve Hoffman. I'm not exactly sure when this talk was given. It was uploaded back in 2019, but I'm not sure when this lecture was actually given. But a friend of mine shared it with me recently, and I started working on a video on this a couple weeks ago now, and then I got put in the YouTube timeout chair. So I'm fresh out of there, thanks to our good friends, the AI Thought Police. So while waiting for that to be lifted, I kept adding. So I'll try and keep it fairly short, but it could turn out to be longer than originally. But starting with Hoffman, he's this Silicon Valley startup guru guy, and as a result has worked with all these different companies in China and Europe and America. And as you've heard, he's very much drinking the Kool-Aid of transhumanism and broader scientific evolutionary, techno-mysticism, I would say. And the number of correlations in this one talk to parallel spiritual topics, it was really quite surprising to me. Although I suppose it shouldn't be. The more I hear these Silicon Valley guys espousing their, unfettered belief in the pursuit of upgrading humanity. He actually talks about becoming neo-sapiens that will be more than human. And the major theme is this topic of brain-computer interface, and it goes through lots of different examples of the types of things that they hope to achieve through this, but I'd say a key aspect of what he's talking about is that what they envision for the majority of people is interfacing with the internet in ways that don't require a chip or any sort of hardware, such as Neuralink. And he talks about Neuralink and basically summarizes all that research being something that specifically will apply to people like paralysis or various physical or neurological, conditions where you're trying to bypass a broken, connection in a person's nervous system. But really what he says is the holy grail of all this research is communicating wirelessly with human beings.
So my point is that as this technology emerges, we will be creating our own new realities. So there will be a reality, like what we all live in now is the reality of being these bodies that have been around, that evolved over millions of years and, have been the same for over 100,000 years. We are entering that world of neo-sapiens where there is going to be a reality beyond anything any human being has experienced in the past. We will literally also, if we are connected to the internet, we will become the internet. We will end up becoming one giant organism where all of us are interconnected, where my emotions and my pain and my memories and my life and your emotions, we're just swapping them, just like we swap all this data online right now. It is just becoming one giant thing. Now, a lot of mystical philosophers and great thinkers have posited the idea that heaven is that ultimate unification of all of consciousness, right? So, whether you call it nirvana or heaven or any other name, it's transcending yourself, becoming more than yourself and entering a space where you are truly part of a being greater than yourself. So there is that potential as we create the internet to create a sort of heaven where all of us are together and all of us we're in this greater world of sensations and ideas and sharing than we have ever had before. But there's also a danger. So, like any technology, there are great things we could do, and then there are very horrible things that could result from it that are unanticipated. Now, if somebody hacks into your cell phone or your bank account, they can steal your identity. But it's not your real identity. It's more like your money. And that's bad enough, right? That's pretty bad if you get hacked. and they steal your, they do identity theft. But if they're connected, if your brain is connected directly to the internet, then it will be real identity theft. They could take you. They could literally erase you. They could reprogram you in a way without you even knowing it. So you think you're in control of your own will, but it's actually somebody else. And who do we trust with this technology? Well, apparently not Mark Zuckerberg. He didn't do that good a job at protecting our data. Do we trust a government? Do we trust Donald Trump? Who do we trust? Yeah, decentralized, a blockchain, right? You're going to have technology that protects us, technology which really doesn't exist today, and it has to be so foolproof, and we have to have so much faith in it that we're willing to open up our brains to that potential of being hacked.
And this is a guy who's been around for many years, and he's not the only one. I found another very similar talk that was given at the end of 2019 by another one of these Silicon Valley guru, tech guru guys named Peter Diamandis, basically giving the same underlying pitch, and in fact also alluding to many of the same spiritual themes in his talk as well.
So what's it like when you can know anything? Where if you're connected and I'm connected, I can know your thoughts and feelings and emotions. Is it going to make us more empathic to each other? Is it going to say, hey, listen, I want you to succeed. When you succeed, I succeed, because we're all part of the same meta-intelligence, right? Do we think about the fact that we are all a collection of 30 to 50 trillion cells that make us human, right? You're not a single living organism. You're 30 trillion organisms working together collaboratively. And so I think these kinds of technologies of BCI are going to create a collection of 8 billion people. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. My only problem with the Roddenberry universe is they made the Borg evil. If they'd made the Borg friendly, that would have been much better. But so when we connect, and I can see a sunrise through the eyes of someone in Japan, or I can feel the pain, or I can share my thoughts and my feelings with individuals. Is that a world that's going to be more peaceful? I think it is. I think it's a world that's more awake. And we talk about doing this through plant medicine. We talk about doing it through meditation. There's a technological solution as well that is coming online. We'll see where it goes.
I seem to hear from these guys that it sounds like science fiction, and it sounds really out there, be it they're earnestly working on this stuff. And if they're talking about it in the public sphere now, then when you hear somebody like Hoffman say that, DARPA's been actively working on this for years, then what that means in terms of how far this technology has really advanced is undoubtedly, way farther than what they've been talking about openly in the public domain now. But it was specifically this point where he talks about not needing hardware like contact lenses or Google glasses and VR headsets and all these things. Because similar to when we dream, or for those people who have taken mind-altering drugs and had that type of psychedelic experience, he makes a very interesting, and I would say quasi-valid point, in a way, that our brains don't need this hardware to do this kind of AR and VR projection when stimulated by the right chemicals or the right inputs, the right stimulation. So from their naturalistic evolutionary standpoint, where the brain is all there is, you can kind of understand how they can make these parallels and these connections, and then kind of blindly dive into seeking to essentially technologically replicate all these things, which when you really step back and look at every single example he gives, whether it's, connecting to things remotely, communicating our thoughts telepathically, telekinesis, out-of-body experiences, the ability to download massive amounts of information at just a thought, having godlike intelligence, the hive mind, it's the whole hive mind idea. But really, when you step back and think about every single thing he mentions. They're actually all things that have been experienced by humans for thousands of years, in fact. And yet here they are talking about using computer technology and AI, obviously, to utilize this same vast field of what in any other circumstance would be called metaphysical, metaphysics, the mind sciences, all that stuff. But now suddenly when we're talking about it in terms of brain-computer interface, it's just science somewhere, it's supposedly just somewhere between science and science fiction in this development stage. And I'm sure that's what it sounds like to a lot of people, although at the same time I can't help but feel like that perhaps here in 2021, being able to look back and see how far so many of these agendas have progressed in the past 12 months in terms of the consolidation of power control by big tech in collaboration with government and para-government entities and such, and the remarkable speed at which they were suddenly able to compel countless millions of people to adopt a new approach to working from home, working remotely via the internet through Zoom calls and video conferencing and all this stuff in a manner that was already progressing in that direction, sure, but suddenly was adopted on a completely different scale than would have been probably considered possible via any other scenario. And the crazy thing is, this is an idea that was actually being promoted decades ago by none other than good old right hand of Satan, Walter Cronkite himself.
Now, this is where a man might spend most of his time in the home of the 21st century. This equipment here will allow him to carry on normal business activities without ever going to an office away from home. This console provides a summary of news relayed by satellite from all over the world. Now, to get a newspaper copy for permanent reference, I just turn this button, and out it comes. When I've finished catching up on the news, I might check the latest weather. This same screen can give me the latest report on the stocks I might own. A telephone is this instrument here, a mock-up of a possible future telephone. This would be the mouthpiece. Now, if I want to see the people I'm talking with, I just turn the button and there they are. Over here, as I work on this screen, I can keep in touch with other rooms of the house through a closed-circuit television system. With equipment like this in the home of the future, we may not have to go to work. The work would come to us. In the 21st century, it may be that no home will be complete without a computerized communications console.
I mean, looking back, it's an astoundingly prophetic vision of what now is suddenly part of the whole new normal. And yet it's this point that we're at right now, which I continually hear being emphasized by these guys like Hoffman and Diamandis and Musk and Kurzweil and all these transhumanists, merge our brains with technology kind of prophets of scientism. They always point out just how far we already have come, how much we've already embraced this trajectory and become, cyborgs, as Elon Musk likes to say. Right, we're already using pacemakers and our cell phones and Googling everything. And the scary part about that argument that you always hear being made is how admittedly true it already was, but now more so than ever, on a scale never before seen, where everything goes through your cell phone, everything goes through the internet. Shop on the internet, go to church on the internet. I don't even, it's not like I need to really expound on that. What 2020 has meant in terms of, the coming out party for the technocracy, I guess. And if you don't see it happening now, then I don't know how anyone ever will, if they can't at this point. But it really does kind of push the issue and push the question of how much further could we really go in this new normal that so many people are just going along with. But, just having to stare at your phone all the time, like everyone does, or stare at a computer screen. Wouldn't it be so much easier just to be able to think it and see it and have little pop-up windows in your field of vision and be able to browse as you talk and Google with your thoughts and just message your friends the second you think of something. As crazy as all that sounds, the craziest thing about it to me is that how appealing you have to know that would be. And even to myself, when I think about it, like how frightening that would be to have that kind of ability. And I'm saying that purely hypothetically, since I would never do anything intentionally or consciously to receive any of these technologies or advances or upgrades or whatever, whether it's being called that or called something else. So, the difficult thing about this topic is because it kind of straddles this line between things that are being just put out there into the public sphere against our will or without our knowledge. We're all swimming around in high-frequency waves, layers upon layers of frequencies all the time, in a way that has never been sustained by human beings ever in history. So that's one thing. But there's so many. But I just mean, even in my own Luddite, wishing I could go back to the 1990s kind of mentality that I feel like I have so much of the time, man, I can only imagine what kind of internet crackheads everyone would be, and yet we already are. And sometimes that feels like the hardest thing to get past these days, even to sit down and do a video, is just wanting so badly, now that it's getting nice out, especially in spring, is finally like here, and the leaves are starting to blossom, and I'm so ready to get outside, but I've been trying to work on this and do this research. But this fourth industrial revolution, of course, just like everything else, it's being marketed and sold to the public as the modern technologically achieved route of opening our eyes so that we would know good and evil and be like God and understand all things, right? If these guys aren't spouting a techno-mystic gospel, then I don't know who is. Speaking of which, I found this recent article at futurism.com. Neuralink co-founder has an idea for a new religion. It might already exist. Max Hodak, the entrepreneur who co-founded neurotech company Neuralink alongside Elon Musk, has an idea for an entirely new religion. And it involves tripping on natural substances to feel the presence of God. Increasingly believe there's an opportunity for a new religion, Hodak tweeted in reply to productivity startup Forte Labs founder Tiago Forte. Forte had said that, quote, after a decade as an atheist, I think I'll try religion again, and was looking for recommendations for a religion that respects science, cares about the underprivileged, and is also not, quote, evangelistic or politically active. Forte's quest set up an interesting idea by Hodak. What if there was a religion that embraces the weirdness of math and physics, and it's facilitated by entheogens, an umbrella term for psychoactive substances ingested for religious or spiritual purposes, including ayahuasca and LSD? Needless to say, it's a rather unusual idea coming from a man who co-founded a company with the express intent to physically access your brain via a brain-machine interface. To Hodak, such a religion would offer, quote, practical moral guidance and also create a sense of community, something that people already, quote, get through church. Other Twitter users willing to take up the biomedical engineer on the idea pointed out that it might already exist in the form of the Burning Man Festival, which is existing cachet in the startup crowd. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting so tired of reading quote-unquote articles that are pulling everything from Twitter. The man burn should definitely be a high holiday in such a religion, he responded in a follow-up tweet, referring to the act of a massive temple being constructed over the 8 days of the popular art festival and burned to the ground on the final night. Besides, plenty of, quote, burners already have a tendency to embrace weirdness by ingesting entheogens. It's not the first time that Hodak has entertained some mind-bending concepts. Just last week, he suggested that video games are about to become a lot more real. We're going to need a better term than video game once we start programming for more of the sensorium, he tweeted. It can be difficult to reconcile technological process with more traditional forms of spirituality, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Would a microchip implanted in the brain perhaps facilitate a religion based on a decentralized, science-forward way of thinking, as Hodak suggests? That would be speculation, but the idea is intriguing. But one thing is for sure, Silicon Valley executives aren't afraid to entertain provocative ideas in the open, no matter how far-fetched. So yeah, long story short, New Age spirituality and not just conceptual beliefs, but this eagerness to use the BCI, brain-computer interface, to mimic not just specific elements of, hallucinating and controlling those hallucinations in some sort of, internet-connected heads-up display kind of manner, but indeed a whole new and all these guys every time they're talking about empathy and how we'll all be. It's oneism. It's techno-monism. I don't know. But it's everywhere, and hopefully people can start to see just how spiked the Kool-Aid really is, I guess. There really is no compartmentalizing transhumanism from evolution, from the quest to explore the galaxy. It's always the same guys excited about all the same things, pushing all the same things, and advocating the idea of all these technologies, AI, quantum computing, brain-machine interface, all converging together into this one neo-sapien future. And indeed, they are continuing to converge at a very rapid pace. For instance, here is an article talking about Cleveland Clinic will be IBM's first private sector customer to install a quantum computer on the premises. March 30th, 2021. IBM today announced that it is installing a quantum computer at the Cleveland Clinic, marking the first time the company has physically placed this next-generation system on the premises of a private sector client. The move marks yet another step forward for quantum computing. It comes as a part of a broader 10-year partnership between IBM and the clinic that includes hybrid cloud service and AI. According to IBM Quantum Network Director Anthony J. including a quantum computer as part of that suite of tools is critical because the company wants to understand which tasks are better suited to quantum computations. Despite rapid advances, quantum computers are still in their infancy, but it's possible they could be more efficient at limited tasks. The Cleveland Clinic will have the full capacity of a quantum system be purpose-built for them. Will have a much better ability to integrate it into their existing infrastructure. There will be benefits in doing that as we figure out how quantum can address these really tough problems and how it can accelerate the application of AI. Partners have dubbed the program the Discovery Accelerator, and its overall goal is to power new breakthroughs in healthcare and life sciences. IBM's computing tools are being leveraged to better harness the clinic's wealth of data, including genomics, single-cell transcriptomics, population health, that's clinical applications, and chemical and drug discovery, according to a press release. The eye-catching part of the announcements, however, is the move to physically place a quantum computer at the clinic. Until now, the company is focused on its IBM Q network, a consortium of research and business partners who can experiment with quantum computing via cloud-based service. IBM has grown increasingly optimistic about quantum's potential and has laid out an ambitious timetable for expanding commercial applications. In many cases, and this is great, researchers feel progress in these areas is being limited by the ability to gather and analyze massive data sets. The clinic is betting that a system that combines AI, quantum computing, and hybrid cloud technologies will remove those hurdles and unleash new healthcare innovation. Yeah, so we need to gather more data. We're not gathering enough data. We need to gather all the data and feed it to the quantum computers. So this is kind of a big deal, because like the article says, they already have access. All these companies that want access to quantum computing can do it through the cloud. So the fact that they're actually going to the effort of putting it in the clinic, like it's their own exclusive quantum computer, to be used for, like they said, genomics and population health, right? All those good noble causes that they're working on. So these things are continuing to just roll out and promise all these great breakthroughs while we harvest and analyze more and more data, because that is the name of the game. So that's that in the quantum realm. In a similar yet different vein, David Beverly actually shared this one with me. So this is a new breakthrough from NVIDIA, but they've come on with this new type of technology that they're developing, which was announced about 4 or 5 months ago, that essentially is using deepfake technologies in the name of reducing bandwidth requirements for video conferencing. Now, that might sound kind of boring, but this is pretty crazy when you think about how far this has already come. When like a year or two ago, people were just hearing about the idea of deepfakes, and the fact checkers are now dutifully exposing all the deepfakes, right? All the ones you need to know about. And yet NVIDIA here is coming out with this program that essentially uses way less bandwidth, because what it does is it takes a picture of the person and a little bit of video at the beginning to basically map the face and the facial movements, and then it jettisons the majority of the data that it's streaming and just basically streams a really low-res, blurry, picture of almost nothing, and then reconstructs it at the other end in real time so that it looks almost photorealistic, when in reality it's not a real video feed. It's it's an initial render, it's a face capture and a little facial map, and then it's just following the movements. And so because what's being created on the other end is an AI generated facsimile, you can play with all kinds of things like, oh look, we can make you face forward or side to side and tilt around, or we can plaster that person's face on someone else, on a different body. Look, what a great innovation this is. It's like if Pandora's box could be fractal, that's where we are, I would say. Where on the one hand, technology is becoming more and more predominant in everyone's life, whether they really were interested in it or not. And here we are trying to process what's already going on in the name of science and medicine and societal intervention and all these things, right? And so to stop and think that, it could actually even get weirder and crazier before all is said and done. Are we ready for that? I don't know. I don't know if I am, but the thing that really blew me away, when Steve Hoffman is talking about we can essentially create either heaven or hell on Earth, and it's up to us. I mean, is there any way you could even argue that this is not a religion? More and more people are coming out wanting to call it such, or call it, it's spirituality. Isn't it ironic that so many people continue to scoff at the Bible and ridicule the message of Jesus because they're just, they're above that religious stuff. And religion's all about control, and by religion they mean the God of the Bible, inevitably. We can go create our own religion, our own Burning Man in our own hive minds. A burning man every day in the hive mind of neo-humanity, right? This giant shared hallucination that we're all gonna turn on, tune in, and drop out into the Google sphere and live happily ever after. That is, of course, if we successfully merge with AI so that AI doesn't wipe us out. Decide that we're all obsolete. So, all of these narratives they're religious narratives, and it's the biggest religious cult in all of history. And it's only getting cultier, and only getting crazier, and more antichrist in its nature and its agenda with every step. And as much as looking at all this stuff, it's really kind of overwhelming at times when you think about all of these technologies being rapidly infused into our society under the guise of, a crisis, under the guise of, empowering people. We're gonna eliminate poverty. Everyone's gonna be a genius. This is crazier than any form of communism that has ever been preached or forced upon people. This is collectivism on a scale that, it has only existed in science fiction. But even there, nothing you've ever seen in a science fiction movie, even if you put them all together, would compare to the scale of what is taking place ultimately under the guidance and the inspiration of the demonic realm. All these breakthroughs that humanity is just aching to see come to pass. But none of these dreams even compare to what God has already promised to those willing to surrender themselves to Him and become part of the family of God. And that's not all just waiting for us at the resurrection either, but the fact that we wirelessly can communicate with the creator of everything at any time.
Psalm 143. Hear my prayer, O Lord, give ear to my supplications. In thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness. And enter not into judgment with thy servant, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified. For the enemy hath persecuted my soul. He hath smitten my life down to the ground. He hath made me to dwell in darkness, as those that have been long dead. Therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me. My heart within me is desolate. I remember the days of old. I meditate on all thy works. I muse on the work of thy hand. I stretch forth my hands unto thee. My soul thirsteth after thee, as a thirsty land. Selah. Hear me speedily, O Lord. My spirit faileth. Hide not thy face from me, lest I be like unto them that go down into the pit. Cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning, for in thee do I trust. Cause me to know the way wherein I should walk, for I lift up my soul unto thee. Deliver me, O Lord, from mine enemies. I flee unto thee to hide me. Teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God. Thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. Quicken me, O Lord, for thy name's sake. For thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. And of thy mercy, cut off mine enemies, and destroy all them that afflict my soul. For I am thy servant.